50 years ago, NBC aired a new episode of classic Star Trek named Court Martial, and these are my quick thoughts on it. Although I like this episode, I must admit it has many problems. The pacing is uneven, it has many plot lines which go nowhere, the ending feels rushed, and a huge amount of footage was cut, at least I assume that, leaving me with a strange feeling at the end, which could be described only as, huh? Does anybody actually know what was going on? To be perfectly honest, I have no clue what happened before the story started. I must admit one thing, I'm used to watch Star Trek dubbed, so I thought that the meaning was lost in translation, so I tried to watch it in English last night, first time after maybe more than 10 years, but it didn't really help. So what happened is that the Enterprise got into an ion storm. For some reason, Lieutenant Commander Ben Finney was ordered to go to some pod to do some science stuff. For some reason, Kirk decided to jettison the pod, which means he effectively killed Finney, his supposed friend. Even though I admit I don't really understand the background, but it's not important. What is important is that Kirk is accused he did it when the ship was only in yellow alert, technically committing a murder. But he claims he gave Ben enough of time to do his science stuff and decided to jettison the pod when the ship was already on red alert. In other words, he claims he had no other chance than killing him. The problem is that even though they were friends, Ben actually secretly hated Kirk because he reported a few years ago one of his mistakes and he was not promoted because of this. And the prosecution now claims that Kirk knew it and intentionally killed him. The court-martial takes place again on Starbase 11. The prosecutor is Kirk's old love, Reel, and she recommends him Sam Cogley as the attorney. They are building him like he was supposed to do something amazing to save Kirk, but the truth is he does absolutely nothing and he's absolutely useless for the main plot. The first subplot which goes nowhere is Mr. Spock beaming to the starbase. Kirk is nervous where he is, he calls the Enterprise and Uhura tells him that Spock actually left the ship 10 minutes ago. Spock then materializes on the base when Kirk asks him where he was. Spock seems to be confused, like he didn't even know that his transport took 10 minutes. And where does this go? Absolutely nowhere. It's not mentioned again, so why is it in the finished cut? Was this supposed to be originally another clue that something is wrong with the Enterprise computer, but they cut all the scenes out? Another plotline which goes nowhere is Finney's daughter, Jamie. In the beginning, she cries, attacks Kirk, and wants to see him punished. In the next scene, she is suddenly on his side. She mentioned something about reading some letters about their friendship. You know, one of the main rules of visual storytelling is show, don't tell. Wouldn't it be much more interesting if we would actually see it happen? To actually see her inner change of mind? This is one of the reasons why I think that this episode was supposed to be a two-part story, but they changed it during production. The episode very soon becomes a typical courtroom drama, and it's really great if you like this type of stories. We get a huge twist. Ben Finney might be actually still alive. Everybody beams back to the Enterprise, and they beam the crew back to Starbase, including Cogley, who has something to do off-screen, and that's the last time we see him. So he brought absolutely nothing to the story except one dumb speech about machines and humans. Then they do something stupid. Instead of asking the computer to count the people on board or to search for the life signs of Finney, they set up the computer to play the sounds of hearts of all people on board. They then suppress the heartbeats of all bridge people with a microphone, including somehow also the transporter chief off screen, and still hear one heartbeat, which means Finney is alive. And this is when the story becomes really rushed. Kirk gets to confront Finney in the engine room when we find out that Finney has done something to sabotage the engines and the ship is going to blow up. Then we suddenly find out that Cogley went to the starbase to bring Jamie, but we don't see any of the two of them. Did they plan to do some heartbreaking scene in which Jamie talks to her father and that's why he tells them what has he done? Because I think I have seen some pictures where Ben is crying and Jamie was comforting him. Kirk of course saves the ship and of course wins his case and says goodbye to Ariel. Ariel actually says that Cogley is now Ben's attorney and that he will probably win his case. Again, something which would be better to actually see instead of being told. This story feels like they wrote a 2-hour long story, filmed it as a 90 minutes long story and edited it down to 52 minutes. It's rushed, especially in the end. Many of the storylines go absolutely nowhere and a huge amount of information is told to us instead of shown to us. I still like it, but I can't give it more than 7 points out of 10. So what do you think about this episode? Feel free to write it down to the comment section, and if you like this type of videos, feel free to watch any other video on my channel. I do this kind of mini reviews every week, exactly 50 years after the premiere of each episode. So, see you next week.